I am Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. I am Michelle Chalfant. Happy to be here with you in this first week of March. Today is podcast number 252. I have to say, I was reminiscing just for a quick little moment here. I happened to look, I have these big 3 months on my wall. It's like 3 giant wall calendars over to my right over here. And I'm looking over here. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's March. 1 year ago, I was having a moment. 1 year ago, last March, we were celebrating 2 million downloads on this podcast. It was the most surreal, humble moment of my life. I was like, wow, I created this podcast for a few hundred of my clients thinking, yeah, it's a resource for them. And we were at 2 million downloads last March. You guys, we've just hit 3.5 million downloads. Like, oh my goodness. I don't even have words for that. It's absolutely humbling. And even just now, my jaw was up and it was dropped down a little bit. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for helping me to share this show, because what I realize is people in the world need this show. And one of my missions is to help people to heal and transform. But I realized in my own life journey, there was never a manual on how to do that. And the adult chair model is the manual to do that. So when you share the show, you're teaching someone how to live a healthy life. And the bonus is when you guys share a podcast, it's free. So I love that. I love offering free resources to people to help them to heal and transform. Our parents, God bless them all. And I loved my parents, but you know what? Everybody's parents, they all do the best that they can, but they don't have a manual for how to raise children. There isn't just one. And I'm hoping that this is a very general manual for how to live a healthy life. And it's simple. You know, if there's one thing we've heard over the years is that people love the adult chair because it's simple, and simple psychology meets grounded spirituality. That's what this is all about. This is just how I think. That's why it's so simple. So I guess I'm simple and you guys like it. So you must be simple too. But I break things down for myself. And whether you're healing your codependency or relationship issue or an attachment issue or whatever the heck it is, I've probably done a show on it. I break it down so I can understand it. And that's what I share with you guys. And I'm going to do the same thing today. So thank you so much for sharing the show. Please keep sharing and helping me to share the love and healing all around the world. All right, so let's talk about today's show. Last week, that show blew up, you guys. Who knew? By having my husband on the show, Graham, and talking about feeling emotions and transforming and how it can transform relationships, who knew that would be such a big, giant show? Well, it was. And this is a part, I'm not going to say it's a part 2. It's sort of like just based on, I mean, honestly, we've never had so many comments, emails, feedback on any show. So it's kind of shocking. And to answer everyone's question, or my question was, if you guys would like to have him on again, please let me know. And most of you said, please have him on again. So whether you're single or married or anything in between, please listen to that show if you'd like some help with feeling your own emotions and how to transform your own relationships. Any relationship, honestly. It was a raw, vulnerable show, but it was a really, really good show. That was episode 251 with Graham. But the comments that came in, I should say some of them were asking me, Michelle, what did you do in order to get Graham to make the decision to start feeling his emotions? Because this is all new for him, which then transformed, of course, our relationship. And I've shared this on many, many podcasts I've done, which is if you want to change your relationship with anybody, whether it be mother-daughter, friendship, work relationship, whatever it is, marriage, partnership, whatever it is, the dance has to be changed. You've got to change the dance. So with Graham and I, we were doing the waltz. You know what? I was showing up the same way every day. He was showing up the same way. And that was our waltz. And I started doing, let's say, hip hop. I am a pretty good dancer, I got to say. I started doing hip hop and he had to learn how to do hip hop. So what happens in relationships is that people either match you and they dance with you or they sit down. So Graham chose to dance with me and learn hip hop, which for him meant really looking at his own wounding, his own life. And he started feeling his emotions, which really transformed everything for him and for our relationship. So I'm going to talk about today, though, what my part in that was. So when it comes to me doing hip hop, how did I change? How did I start showing up in a new way? That's what I'm going to share with you. I've got about four things that I did in order to sort of shift the dance in our relationship. The only thing I wanted to share with you guys was the announcement about tax circles. So we have the adult chair meetup. This is like an adult chair meetup. We're calling them circles or tax circles, which stands for the adult chair circles. And this is an international thing we're doing. We're launching it in a really big way the first week of April. We have about 20 to 30 groups right now. So if you're interested, you can join right now over at theadultchair.com/tax circles. But next month, in a month from right now, we're launching all over the world. It's so exciting. I can't even tell you. We have thousands of people that are interested either in joining a group or becoming a group leader. So if that interests you, please head on over again to theadultchair.com/tax circles, and you too can become part of these free meetup groups. Okay. The only thing left is to just have a little shout out to our sponsor for today, which is Hair Food. And we're going to hear from them, and I will be right back and we will get on with the show. We all know the benefits of eating superfoods. Well, what if we had products for our hair that were loaded with superfoods? Well, guess what? I have found them. Yep, I've been using clean, simple, kitchen-crafted recipes from Hair Food and have seen amazing results. They have a wide range of products, but I started with their shampoos and conditioners, and they are all incredible. They have tea tree and lavender, manuka honey and apricot, coconut milk and chai spice, just to name a few. And yes, they all smell as good as they sound. I've been using these products for only a month, and my hair feels so much better. It feels healthier and softer with far less dry and split ends. And why wouldn't it feel healthier? I'm feeding it good, healthy food. These products are also free of sulfates, parabens, and dyes, because let's face it, your hair does not want to eat that stuff. The best part is the price. The products are so affordable. Check them out for yourself at Bed Bath & Beyond, Target, Walmart, or Amazon. Your hair will thank you. So here we go. Let's get on with the show today. So what happens? What are some things that you can do? I'm going to tell you exactly what my experience was, but some of them are pretty general, and you can also do this in your own relationships in order to help your relationships shift if that's what you're looking to do. Because I really got to tell you, in general, and again, in general, people just don't randomly suddenly change. They just don't poof change overnight. Something needs to happen. Their awareness increases. They do their own personal work. They look deeper inside of themselves and say, I don't like this. I'd like to change myself. So I just want you to be aware of that. Stop waiting for your person to change. Again, whether it be a friend or whomever, they're just not going to change. I've heard from so many people that say, when we move in together, things are going to be so different. Or when we get married, they're going to be different. Or when we have a baby, they're going to be different. Nope, doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Things are not going to improve. I should say people might change, but not in the way you want them to change. If you want there to be a more positive, connected relationship that's honest with boundaries and healthy, you got to look inside and do your work. You have to. So let me start out by saying this. We got married when in our late 20s. I think we were 28 or 29. We got married and we came together beautifully like two magnets, like all of us do, with all of our childhood wounding attracting us to each other. It was quite lovely. But of course, we didn't know it. We did not know it. You know, so many people say to me, I thought I was marrying someone different, or I really wanted to get away from my wounding, you know, from childhood, or I didn't want to marry my mother, or my father. And damn it, I did. Yep, I know. It is fascinating to me how that happens. Absolutely fascinating. We are always attracting in other people based on really our unconscious programming. And guess where that comes from? Yep, childhood stuff. So this is what happened with us. So I got married and I was a really, really good codependent wife. One of the best out there, let me tell you. Even Graham had some of those qualities as well. So we've been married 24 years now. But what I noticed was over the years, I was very good at being quiet and sweeping things under the carpet because that's what I learned from my own family. We were very, these Italians that I grew up with were loud, crying, yelling, fighting, all of that. But there was never any resolve to the fights, by the way. They just were swept under the carpet the next day like they didn't even happen. Now, with Graham's family, there really weren't fights. You know, there wasn't a lot of talking, yelling, crying. His dad would have these occasional blow ups like out of left field. And then boom, everyone would sweep everything under the carpet. So in our families, we unconsciously learned, of course, to sweep everything under the carpet. All of the issues would just go away with a big giant broom. And then, of course, when we get married, that unconscious programming is there to sweep all the issues under the carpet. And that's just what we did. In addition to that, we also became our parents. This fascinated me as well. So Graham became, he went from this footloose and fancy free, fun guy, going out, having a blast, and got married and became the guy that had to work hard, take care of the family, the weight of the world on his shoulders. And just like his dad, would have this stress and this pressure, but also write down that there's generational anger on his side with his dad's side of the family. And his dad was wonderful. I loved my father-in-law, but he'd get mad sometimes. It was like out of left field. All of a sudden he'd get upset with his wife about something and blah, blah, blah. It'd be like this quick little outburst and then it'd be done and over and again, right under the carpet. And I noticed Graham started doing that. When we got married, it would be just like a little bit of control here and there or judgment here and there. Very like in the beginning, it was minimal, but it was there. But it was just like what his dad did, but on a much smaller scale. And with me, I got married and became more like my mom, more submissive, more small. And now I'm not saying that everybody does this, but we unconsciously learn these things when we're growing up. And that's our programming. So there's a good chance you're going to become that when you get married or when you get older. Even if you're not married, that's just our programming is there and we're living out our lives based on our programming. It was fascinating for me because remember, I had just had my son. He was 2 weeks old. And so therefore we had just been married 1 year when my son was born. And my mom was visiting to help take care of the newborn baby I just had. And Graham, it was on a Sunday and he was stressed about the upcoming work week, that Sunday stress. And he just sort of, again, it was this like snapping, like, why'd you do that? Blah, blah, blah. And I turned to him and I said, oh, you're right. I'm so sorry. Yeah, you're right. Okay. And my mother looked at me when he walked away and she goes, where did my daughter go? I can still see where I was standing. I was walking up the stairs. I had my son in my arms 24 years ago. And she goes, where did my daughter go? And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, you would have never let any of your boyfriends talk to you like that. Why'd you let him talk to you like that? And I go, oh, he's having a hard day. It's no big deal. And I swept it under the carpet. Isn't that crazy? I think that's so crazy. Graham and I now talk about that. Like, isn't it insane how we just look, we really did become so much of our parents. My mother was in this Italian family. Her mother had passed away. Her father was gone. It was like she married into this family, and to survive, she got really small. My grandmother was an alcoholic, the uncle, everyone was together all the time. That's what she did. Even though I wasn't in a family like that, the person I married wasn't like them, I learned to be submissive and small when I got married, not when I was single, when I got married. So that was kind of interesting. But anyway, so my story with Graham and how this change happened was, again, on the outside looking in, we were good. And I have to even say, on the inside, we were good. We had a family, we had friends, our families had all moved down to North Carolina. So life was really good. We had a lot of fun. But like in any relationship, issues were rising up, and we did not talk about them. We swept them under the carpet. We found our way around them so that we just wouldn't talk about the tough stuff. We didn't know how to have tough conversations, but we were good. Like it was happy. But even as I say happy, it's like there was stuff. There was absolutely stuff that came up. But, my kids brought me a lot of joy. I had my mom, my sister, my cousins, my aunts, like everybody was around me. So I had a lot of distractions, as did Graham. His whole family moved down. And I just feel like the things that were bothersome in our marriage, we just didn't really talk about. They're just going to go away like magic. And of course they didn't. And this is where our marriage changed eventually. And this is what I'm going to share with you today. So what happened was I continued. I've always been on my spiritual path. I love learning. I love transforming. I love the self, honestly. That is just a passion of mine. And so again, got married at 28 or 29. And even in my teenage years, I was reading books and taking classes, and I got a master's in psychology and went on to get a license in counseling. And here I'm a therapist. I'm also becoming a coach now. And I'm doing all of these things as well as learning everything I could get my hands on from a spiritual perspective. I loved energy medicine, even back in the 90s when nobody was talking about that stuff, as well as very traditional therapeutic methods. And I was learning them and applying them. I'm in therapy, I'm in coaching, I'm doing all of this. So I'm changing. This is what happened. I started to change. And to use the language of the adult chair, if I could go back in time, I would say I was growing a healthy self on the inside, and I was growing a healthy adult is what was happening. I began living with more truth. I was letting less things slip by. And again, I wasn't numbing on anything. I was just really becoming more and more aware or conscious in my marriage. I had more self-worth, more self-esteem. I was just, I was solid. I was becoming more and more solid as we went on in this marriage. And my tolerance was changing for the things that we weren't talking about. My tolerance was changing. And one of those things that we spoke about last week was that Sunday stress. This every Sunday, Graham getting just a little controlling or snippy with us. It was really uncomfortable just being in his presence. And he knows this. He talked about it all last week on that last week's show. He would just snap at us. Even the kids would say, "Oh, Daddy's having Sunday stress." I'm like, "Yeah, we just have to be good and get out of the way." And I realized I was getting less tolerant of that. I'm like, wait a minute. Why are we walking on eggshells? Like, this is your thing. And again, it wasn't that I wasn't appreciative of all that he was doing and working hard for the family. I was just less tolerant of being treated in that way. And the other thing that I started becoming less tolerant of and more aware of, I should say, and more conscious of, was alcohol and my relationship with alcohol. I noticed that I was someone that I drank a lot in my 20s, but when I hit 30, and had my first kid, I was like, and I would drink sometimes, but as I'm doing my more and more personal work, I realized I don't really like alcohol. What am I doing? Why am I drinking when I'm out with friends? Because then I realized it's because they're drinking and I wanted to fit in. And I started getting really clear, like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just done with that. I didn't want to do what other people were doing. I wanted to do what felt right for me. And again, this is what happens when you build this healthy adult self. It's your true self. And you know what? It doesn't look like anybody else's self. And that's good. Become who you are. So I first got clear on myself with drinking. Like, I just don't like it. And I'm not going to do it to fit in. If someone doesn't like me because I'm not drinking, then you're not a friend of mine. Like, sorry. So once in a while I would still have, maybe a glass of wine or something like that with people, but it was more to be social. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, yeah, not doing that unless I absolutely want one, but I just don't even want it anymore. So I got clear first with myself with drinking. I grew up with my grandmother, alcoholic, uncle, alcoholic. My dad drank a lot, but he was very quiet. He was very soft, and it was never any anger or anything like that with it. But with Graham, I don't remember a lot of drinking when the kids were younger. But what happened was, as I was growing on the inside and really getting healthier and growing into this healthy adult self, let me just explain this model to you, this adult chair, just for a second. What happens with most of us is we are adults, like we become physically adults, but on the inside, we're very much navigating from the adolescent chair. When I'm not speaking up for myself and getting small and sweeping things under the carpet and, avoiding conflict and trying to keep everything copacetic and calm in the household, that's adolescent. That's very much an ego part of me, or many ego parts that are doing what they felt necessary in order to keep the peace, survive, and just keep everything calm in the household. That's not a healthy adult. A healthy adult's going to set boundaries and speak up for self and live with their truth, live with greater consciousness and awareness. And that's what was happening. So as this is happening over the years in our marriage, I'm starting to notice, like, we need to talk about, Sunday stress. I don't like how you just said that to me. I mean, even if it wasn't Sunday, I started speaking up. There would be a lot of elephants in the middle of the room, being married. I keep saying growing up, but being married with Graham all these years, 24 years is a long time. And the elephants that were in the middle of the room, I started talking about. And because most of us, of course, lack healthy communication skills, and I was no different. I didn't grow up with watching anyone have healthy communication. He didn't know what to do with it. So I noticed that his drinking started to increase, and I was not okay with that. And what would happen was, as he would drink more, again, my tolerance for it was going down, down, and down. Like, I was not okay with it. He would sometimes get like snippy with me. And I noticed that if I would bring up something and he'd had a couple glasses of wine, his tolerance was lower, and the anger sometimes would come out. He was never physically violent. He was not an alcoholic. I realized, was using alcohol because he didn't know how to have a healthy conversation with me. I certainly didn't know, but I was learning. So I'm the one that started changing this dance in our marriage. I started speaking up. I was becoming less tolerant of what was going on. So the more I'm speaking up, he didn't have any other outlet. He's just drinking more. He started having a couple glasses of wine in the evening. And I'm like, he doesn't drink in the evening during the weekdays, like by himself. What the hell is going on here? And that started happening more and more and more. So I'm getting, talking about more things that were typically uncomfortable for us. And he's having more alcohol, and I'm not liking what I'm seeing. And I really want to be clear. I am, I'm not someone that is anti-alcohol. I don't care. If somebody wants to drink, go for it. If someone wants to drink to the point of getting drunk, I don't really care. Like, if I have friends that drink, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I know what's true for me. And that is, I don't know if I'll ever drink again. I haven't had to drink in a while, but if I do, it might just be one or two. I don't know, but I'm okay with alcohol if someone wants to drink. I don't judge anybody for drinking. Now, Here's what's different. I'm not okay if someone that I'm living with is drinking too much, in my opinion, and then using the alcohol to kind of numb out. And again, the poor guy, he didn't even know how to communicate. Neither one of us did, and we were learning that. But that was his outlet. He just was using that as a means of not really knowing what to do with me, I think. And he talks about this on last week's show. Not as much, I don't think we talked about the alcohol, but I started changing and he realized I've got to step up. I've got to change or I'm going to lose her. And he was right. He was right. So it made, it made sense that he would be having more alcohol. But what I didn't like was these, sometimes he'd have this sideways anger, just like his dad. It would just sneak out like while we'd be talking. And I'm like, I'm not okay with this. I'm just not okay. But what happened is I started noticing that I'm not okay with him the way he's drinking. And it wasn't for him. Let's be really clear about this. It wasn't for him or his health. It was about me. So what happened for me was I noticed that, and I want to share this just because when someone says to you, just go set a boundary, setting boundaries can be very difficult if we don't have a healthy sense of self-worth. And I liken self-worth to being a precious diamond. So if I got to feel inside, I got to realize that I'm a precious diamond on the inside. If I don't realize that, what in the world am I setting a boundary for? Like there isn't any boundary to be set. When you go into a jewelry store, you look at the precious stones and the diamonds, they've got typically an alarm system on them for a reason. That's the boundary because they're precious stones. So you got to see yourself as a very beautiful, precious diamond. And when you can see yourself like that, man, boundaries, they become more natural because you want to protect yourself and you feel like you're worthy and that you deserve to protect yourself. So that's what happened with me. I realized over the work that I was doing within myself, my self-worth was at this really healthy level. And I started speaking up more and more over the last 10 years. And I found, I don't know if it was a correlation of, again, if you have children and you're married and you're driving carpool and you're running around every night of the week, with sports, and we traveled all the time with soccer. When my kids got to the point of driving, when they were 16 and they were able to drive themselves and do a lot of this stuff, I realized I was spending more time at home. And I was more and more around Graham than I had been in years, honestly, because when you have kids, you're running all over the place. But the more we were together, the more I started noticing these things that had been going on for many years, but the less I was tolerating them, that is when the dance started to change. And what happened was I started setting new boundaries that I used to just ignore. I used to ignore the drinking. I'd get on, walk on the eggshells. I just wouldn't say anything. I'd avoid. I would do all of that stuff. But I noticed I started to speak up for myself because I just was not okay with it. I wasn't okay with, again, the sideways anger that would come out sometimes. So I started sharing that with him. So that was something that absolutely started happening. I started saying to him, listen, I don't have a problem with alcohol, but I do have a problem when someone is not being kind to me when they're drinking. And sometimes you're kind and sometimes you're not. And I'm just not okay with that. So we need to come up with something that helps me to feel safe. And I really started saying this more about 5 years ago. Again, as the kids were leaving and doing their own thing and driving, and my other one was leaving for college, there was more time together. And that's where I noticed my tolerance for some of this it was really different. So in the beginning, of course, and I shouldn't say of course, because everyone is different, but with Graham and I, he started, of course, he'd come back and say to me things like, no, that's not true. You have problems with alcohol. You're not really a drinker, so you don't like drinking. This is not my problem. This is your problem. This is, your childhood stuff because your uncle drank so much and your grandmother was an alcoholic. So this is you not being comfortable with alcohol. There's a lot of excuses. And here's the thing. When you have healthy self-worth, you're able to really sit in the adult chair, you guys. And that means I was able to sit in a place of presence, clarity, and truth. And it's like I was like this rock of Gibraltar, like so clear, like no one's going to push me over this giant boulder. And I was able to start looking at him saying, nope, that's not true. That's not true. Here's what is true. I'm not comfortable with you and the way you talk to me sometimes when you're drinking. I don't like the anger, and that needs to stop, which means you either need to get help for yourself and figure out where that anger is coming from, or you need to stop drinking so much around me. I don't want to be around it anymore. I don't like you when you're drinking. And I was very clear. And of course, I want to be also very transparent here. The first few times when I set these boundaries, I was clumsy. So please, if you're going to do this, give yourself grace. I wasn't perfect at setting boundaries, but the more I did it, the clearer I got around what's okay with me and what's not okay. And all of a sudden it was like, absolutely not. This is what's okay with me. And what I started saying to him was, I came up with this idea because what I found was, even if he would get in bed and I wouldn't see him all night, or he was watching a movie, drinking his wine, and he'd get in bed, my nervous system couldn't handle it. Even if he and I weren't even talking, I could be sound asleep. He'd climb in bed. I would wake up because the nervous system knows. So what I started saying is, hey, I need you to, if you're going to have more than 2 drinks, I want you to sleep on the couch, or I want you to sleep in the other room. I don't want you to get in the bed with me. Period. There's no apologizing and no excuses. It's just what I need. And it was a little wobbly in the beginning. He would still come in and it was no big deal. And, he might say, well, you slept okay that night. So I don't know that that's true. Graham started really respecting me. And when he did that, that changed how I saw him. When he respected me in that way, I looked at him in a new way, and I really had deep appreciation for him. It really started changing our relationship. And the frequency of his drinking went way down. And I just really want to clarify, he was always a social drinker. We'd go to a party, he'd have a few. Sometimes at night, he'd have a glass of wine. But he was never this big, huge drinker. He was not an alcoholic. Just want to be really clear about that. And this is a really important topic, because for those of you listening, if you're living with an alcoholic or anyone that's just drinking too much, it's important to pay attention and notice like what's okay with you and what your limits are. So for me, his frequency went up when I started speaking up for myself, when I started setting boundaries and limits around what was okay with me. And the drinking at home even became more frequent. It was not every day, but it was, and it wasn't like he was drinking bottles of wine every single day by any means, but it was just more frequently. And again, when he was drinking and we would have conversations, that's when sometimes our conversations would turn sideways and he'd get upset or kind of judgy with me. And that's what I didn't like. But once he turned toward getting his own or doing his own work, and he found, all right, I found him actually this phenomenal somatic therapist, which they help really feel into what's going on in the body, which were his emotions that were, rising up. He didn't know what to do with them. And of course, he found his own coach to work with. When that started happening, or when that happened, then he started to drink far less. And again, everything just kept changing for the better in our relationship. But the dance changed when I started setting the boundaries, let's back up a little bit more. I was getting more conscious and clear about myself first. Then I got clear about other and what was okay with me, with other people being around me. And that included drinking and other things as well. And then it got to the point for him where he realized, I'm not fooling around. Like, no more sweeping under the carpet. And we're going to be talking about these elephants in the room. And if you want to do that with me, you either have to learn on your own, which wasn't working too well, or you're going to have to go and get some help to figure out how to do that. And that's what he did. And that's when really things started to change so much for us and for the better. And our relationship just did pretty much a 180. It's crazy where we were on day one, of course, getting married, and where we are today. And we did so much of the work, the deep work, just in the last few years. And we really brought the adult chair into our relationship. We brought consciousness in, and we brought awareness into everything we were doing and saying, and the choices and decisions that we were making. The next thing I knew, and it might have been around the same time, that I noticed that I wasn't tolerating anymore was this snippy sort of Sunday stress, but even it would happen sometimes, not on Sundays. Sometimes the way he talked to me, I just didn't like it. I'm like, I don't deserve to be talked to like that. If you love me, you should not be talking to me like that. Again, and I'd say, this is your stuff. I don't know what's coming up for you, but the way you talk to me is not okay. Period. That's the boundary. And it needs to stop. It needs to stop. It was just and I'd say I'm just not going to live like this. I'm done. So again, there was, it wasn't that bad. And sometimes there were excuses, but eventually he just started saying, okay, you're right. I'm sorry. And he started owning it. That to me is so freaking respectful when someone has made a mistake and they snap at you and then they can own it. Because for God's sake, we all have bad days. We all have stressful days. We all say things we don't want to say, or we by mistake say, or anything like that. But when people can own it and say, I'm really sorry. And he started doing that. That again changed how I saw him. And what I noticed that started happening for me was, I'd said to him for so many years, I really want us to have a deeper connection. I want us to have a deeper connection. And what I noticed started to happen was this connection. I started respecting him and appreciating him in a brand new way. Now, I always appreciated many things that he did. I'd say to him, thank you for, when our kids were small, thank you for being such a good provider. Thank you for stopping at the store on the way home. He did a wonderful husband from that perspective, and even great dad. But these things that were happening from the beginning were creating a lack of deep emotional connection for us. And again, on the outside, we looked great and we get along great and we would laugh all the time, but there was something missing. And what I noticed that started happening was when he started respecting me in this way, not only did I feel this deep emotional connection for him, but what he wanted, he's very much a physical person when it comes to the 5 love languages. He's physical. I felt myself want to reach for him more and hold his hand and do all the things that he wanted. Even intimacy, all of that started to change because he was showing up and just respecting me, and we were talking in a new way. So just so important for him to do that. So again, I don't know what side of the coin you're on here, but really own your stuff, you guys. And when someone else owns it, thank them. I really would say to him, I really noticed, even when he'd sleep in the other room, I'd say, I really appreciate the fact that you went down and slept in the other room. Really, really appreciate that. It means a lot to me because I was able to get a good night's sleep, and I really feel heard and seen when you do that. And he's like, oh, it's no problem. And now if he has more than 2, I don't even say a word. He just knows he's in the other bedroom. And God, by the way, I'm not angry. Again, I'm not apologizing like, oh, so sorry you got to sleep down there. Hell no. This is just my boundary. I'm protecting my diamond. I am a diamond and I got to protect it. And this is the boundary that I need. So Sunday stress, let me just tell you, 24 years in on this marriage, it was so bad. Even my friends would come over and go, oh, how's Sunday stress? Or I don't know that I want to come over with Sunday stress. It was like a joke with my friends and my family. But I got to tell you, just in the last few years, it is minimal. So big time. I mean, it really changed us. Another thing is I invited him to really own his stuff. This is hard for people. This is really hard. This is what caused him to really, I think it might have been right around this time when he started doing this, or when I pushed him to do this, I should say, or invited him to do this, when he really got in there and started doing some really good counseling. He's seen a somatic therapist, and he had a life coach that he was working with that also was pushing him. But I started saying to him things like, listen, you've got this anger. And again, when I would share this with him, it was not perfect every time. I'm not going to lie. But most of the time, it was just a matter-of-fact statement from the adult chair. I would say to him, listen, you got this anger that comes out on occasion, and it feels terrible. And by the way, I know you when you're at your best. It's not you. You know, your dad had this anger. His dad, I loved his father. Wonderful man. But he had sideways anger too. And you know what? His father had a lot of anger. So this kind of thing just gets passed right down generationally. And I said to Graham, you know, you can end this. You can really end this anger. You've got to own it. You've got to own that you've got something with anger. I don't want to label it like as an anger issue, but if you want to, you can. And we talked a lot about it, and he finally did. He would say things like, well, do you think I like having anger? And I don't like it. And well, I'm not going to say that, you know, all this. And I'm like, okay. And I was very pleased, you know, own it. Like when someone really owns their stuff, it's such a vulnerable thing. And it's also like so attractive. At least to me. I don't know. I shouldn't speak for all of you, but to me, it's so damn attractive when someone really owns the fact that they've got anger, or they're stuck in grief, or whatever the heck it is, whatever it is. It's just part of who we are, and it doesn't change who we are. But man, I love that. It's really just a beautiful thing to see. But when Graham owned that anger, man, that really changed everything. And he did push back in the beginning. He'd say, well, you had anger too, and you have anger. And I'm like, and I'm really clear about mine. I had freaking rage in high school, rager. 20s, I was not crazy every single day, but I looked forward to it. Like it was like such a release. I've realized rage was a release. I learned that from my uncle. He was a huge rager. But in my 20s, in fact, I remember when I was with Graham, I think we might have been married a year. I was so mad at my uncle, the one that is a rager. He was calling and he was yelling at me about something, and, you know, I'm probably drunk. And I just had it. And I took the telephone and I whipped it across the room and put a hole right in the wall. So, but I haven't done that. I did that when I was 30 years old. I'm 53 now. So it's like, I had that in me. Hell yes, I did. And I can honestly own it. Who cares? I don't even care. What am I going to do about it now? I can't beat up on myself now. It was not my best, but you know what? It was the best I could do in that moment. That's being human. That's what I learned from my family. And yeah, so now so when Graham said that to me, you've got anger, I said, I did. I had explosive anger. I had rage. I did. And sometimes I still get angry, but nothing like I used to get. And I don't do that anymore. I've released so much of that. I've done a lot of healing around my past. So when he said that to me, it didn't trigger me. I'm like, yep, I did. I remember saying to him, when's the last time you saw me really get crazy, raging, mad? Now, maybe once in the last couple of years. I don't know. But it wasn't like I was throwing things through the window or anything. I was just really, really angry about something. And that's okay. But when you own your stuff, you're not triggered. No one can trigger me. If someone looks at me and says, you're an angry person, I know what's true and I know I'm not. And even if I was, I'd be like, yep, okay. When you own your stuff, it sets you free. So own it. Again, you don't need to put it on Facebook, but own it for yourself and for the person that you're in a relationship with, because it really will change that relationship in a positive way, especially if you own your stuff and add to it, if it's needed, a legit apology. And let me just remind you, I know I did a whole show on this. I just got to remind you because we're talking about this. A legit apology is, by the way, I just got to add this too. Graham has been apologizing so beautifully. It's brought me to tears recently, like as in like even in the last month, but he's been doing it for a while. That also has changed me. So if you're someone listening that wants to change your relationship, own it and apologize. Graham has said to me, I am so sorry. This is a legit apology. I'm so sorry for ever blaming you about the drinking. I'm sorry I projected on you. I'm so sorry that I put you through that. Please forgive me. I mean, when he talks to me like that, I just start crying. I'm like, oh my God, I've waited my whole marriage, for this. But he's been doing this because he really gets it. He really gets it. And that's changed our dance. But again, I had to stand up for myself in order for all of these beautiful things to happen. I really had to stand up for myself. Now he takes full responsibility for his stuff. It's so beautiful. He's changed. There's a softness to him that I've never seen. So this is the last thing. The thing also that's really helped us is to, and do this again with your friend, with your mother, with whomever, be relational with them. Share your reality. If you're in a home with somebody and living with someone or not, even if if it's someone you don't live with, share with them what's going on with you. If you're in a bad mood, share that with them. That's something Graham and I were not good at in the beginning of our relationship. He would get snippy and not say a word. And then of course me, my codependent self would think, what did I do wrong? Oh my God, I've done something wrong. And I would again start cleaning and fixing things around the house and making sure the kids are okay and all this when they were little. And he would get, angry. It was like this, he'd be getting angry and I'd get on eggshells. And instead what I would do is I would just get quiet for days. I'd be quiet. I wouldn't say a word. And it wasn't that I was stonewalling him. I would be polite and respectful, but certainly not relational. So what I mean by relational, this is a beautiful thing I learned from Pia Melody. Being relational means saying things to the person that you're upset with or that you're in relationship with. Things like, hey, I just want you to know I'm going through something. It has nothing to do with you. Or you can just say, I'm going through something. I'm working on it. I might be quiet for a day, or I might be quiet for a few hours. I'll be in touch as soon as I work through it. So when Graham and I are really good at that now, that has really helped our relationship immensely. This is what I mean by we're both doing the hip hop now, because he's able to come to me and say, I had a really stressful day at work, or, hey, even this much, he'd say, now, when you said that to me, that really made me feel, fill in the blank, can we talk about it? And we do talk about it. So 2 more things actually I want to share because they're coming to my mind right now. It's really, really important that when you're in a relationship with someone, I don't care who it is, that you have the tough conversations. If they've hurt you, if you're upset with them in some way, whatever, if they're quiet, you don't know what's going on, talk to them. Have the tough conversations. What's going on? What do we need to talk about? How can we work through this? What do you need? I want to be here for you. I'm here for you. What do you need? And I can already hear the questions coming in. I can already see them in my mind. What do you do if that person says nothing? Then you just be there with them. It's okay. People are afraid to share. For years, I asked Graham 2 different things. First of all, I'd say, hey, you're quiet. What's going on? Nothing. Stressful day at work. I'd hear that. Okay. Hey, you're still quiet. Is it still work? Yep. Hey, you're still quiet. Yep. It's just work. That was the one thing he'd say. And the other thing I noticed when we first got married, I'd get so mad at him because I'd ask him every single day, hey, how's your day today? Great. Hey, how's your day? Great. Hey, how's your day? Great. I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And he'd come home and I'd be like with, 2 babies throwing up on me. And, I'd still be in pajamas at 5, 6 o'clock when he got home. How was your day? And I'd be like, whoa, I'd go on and I'm the emotional one. I'd go on and on. But what we've learned to do is I'm less emotional, which is a positive thing. And emotional meaning, I've learned how to contain my emotions and not blob them all over everybody. And he has learned how to open up to me and be more emotional and share his reality. So something that we do now that we started a couple of years ago is we call it coffee chat. So every weekend, and some weekends we miss, we're not perfect, but we really make the conscious intention to make a cup of coffee and we sit together on the couch. Usually it's like Saturday or Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. And we talk about anything at all that's coming up for us. I've asked many, many couples if they do this and they tell me they don't. This is not a date night. Date night's different. Date night is not time to discuss the heavy stuff. I mean, you certainly can, of course. This is time to bring up anything at all that is kind of in your craw, that's something you really feel like you want to say. So set time aside for that person. Moving back here, I work all the time. And I realize like the relationships that were so important to me, of course, with COVID, I can't see everybody, but a couple of my really good friends here, I'm like, I haven't seen them because I'm working all the time. I'm like, no, I'm going to make time for them. And I sat down and with both of them and separately sat down with them. And I said, I'm really sorry. I just want to be relational with you and say, I've not been putting our relationship as a priority. I really want to make time and I want to see you, every other week, whatever it is. So being relational and sharing your reality is so important, and talking about the tough things, talking about the things that you sweep under the carpet, throw the broom away. Maybe I should call the podcast, Throw the Broom Away. Stop sweeping. I know it's uncomfortable for many of you. Talk about it. You've got to talk about it. And here's the thing, when you're talking about it, you set the tone for how that conversation goes down by if you're in your adult chair or not. So with Graham, when he would come back at me and say things like, that's not true, this is your stuff, blah, 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 this projection, of course, I would look at him very much in my adult chair. And which means, let me tell you what that means. I'm not reacting. I'm not yelling. I'm not raising my voice. He is. And I just very calmly go, yeah, that isn't true for me. It's just not true. Yep, that's not true either. That's not true either. He'd come back with all the excuses and everything. He doesn't do that anymore. I'm honestly telling you guys, he doesn't do that anymore. He really does go into when he's having a bad day. He feels his emotions. That was the podcast from last week, what we talked about. But he feels his emotions. Then he's able to now express his reality to me. It's a game changer. All right. That's it. I know I've given you guys a lot. I'm leaving you with that. I hope you've gotten something out of this today. Many good tips, I feel like, in today's episode to really help you to get clear and change the dance in your relationship with whomever. You guys, again, stay in your adult as much as you can. I'm not perfect at it. But holy moly, do I practice, and I am there so much more than ever before in my life. And I think it's something we will practice until the day we die. It's living, here's the adult chair, living with presence or present moment awareness. That means I'm not going in past and future. It means I'm living with fact and truth. I'm not making up a story or an assumption about why you're not talking to me. I'm going to go straight to the source and I'm going to say, what's going on? I notice you're being very quiet. I notice I texted you 4 times. You didn't text me back. I notice I called you and didn't call me back. I notice I'm trying to talk to you and you're ignoring me. Please share with me what's going on. I care about you. So that means I'm living in fact and truth. I'm not living in story and assumption. And I'm living with boundaries. We do that from our adult. And I'm living with inner strength and compassion for myself. And that means I have enough compassion to take care of myself and to speak up for myself and to treat myself with kindness. Even when I've made a mistake, I'm going to get right back on it and keep going. I'm going to observe my thinking and pick solid thoughts and speak those thoughts. Okay? If I'm triggered, I'm going to take a moment and get in touch with what that trigger is and then speak. I'm not going to react from the place of being triggered. That takes practice. That takes practice. When you're triggered, most of us go launch into an argument. Stop it. It gets you nowhere. It gets you nowhere. We talked about that last week too. So if you're triggered, give yourself a moment. Be relational and say, hey, I need a moment. I'll be back in 30 minutes. That's being relational. Let's talk about this tomorrow. That's being relational. Hey, I need a moment. I'm really triggered. That's being relational. Okay. This is how you change the dance in your relationships. You show up healthy from your adult chair. Everything I talked to you guys about today this is how someone from their adult chair would show up in a relationship. And when you do that, I'm going to promise you something. That relationship you're in, it's going to change. I will bet you on this one because I've done this with other people, not just my husband. And man, let me tell you what, people show up differently. And if they don't want to participate with you in a healthy relationship, because this is living healthy, maybe they shouldn't be in your life anymore. Or maybe you should distance yourself from them. It's not to say you got to end the relationship, but you know what? Maybe you shouldn't be so close. Just saying. I don't know. Use your best intuition on that. So, okay. All right, you guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Again, connect with me on social. I'd love to hear from you. Of course, I'm on Instagram and Facebook, all the places, all the things. Lots of things to keep up with. I'm not going to lie about that. And don't forget, theadultchair.com/TAC circles. Come join us at a city near you, like an advertisement on a commercial, and it's on TV, and a city near you. Come join TAC Circles, theadultchair.com/TAC circles, and meet up with us. We'd love to have you. We'd like to help you to learn how to live in your adult chair. And really, it's about community. For years, people have asked me, I wish there were people in my town that did this because I want to be with people and I want to hang out with people that speak this lingo of the adult chairs. Here you go. They're called TAC circles. So find a circle near you. Okay. That's it. Love you guys. Thank you so much again for all the beautiful feedback we got from even last week's show. Hope you enjoyed this week's show, and I'll see you seated next week right here in the adult chair.